Hey everyone! Today I will be talking about the Universal Design for Learning, or UDL, and how it's used in the intervention process. UDL is a framework that is used by teachers, education staff, developmental specialists, occupational therapists, and other professionals to help create the most inclusive and effective environment for learning. The three key principles of UDL are engagement, representation, and action and expression. Let me explain those a little bit further. So, for engagement, we want to make sure that students, for instance, are interested and motivated to learn. So, this means we want to take into account what type of learners we have. For instance, learners who learn better by themselves, in pairs, or in groups, those who learn better with hands on learning, or verbal instruction or through pictures, whatever it may be. But we want students to be engaged and we want them to want to learn. So that could be taking math facts and turning it into a game, learning sight words by making it a find the word game, or learning science by going outside and having that hands on instruction. For representation, we want to make sure that we're introducing learning in different ways. And that can also mean having students choose where they learn best. For instance, in these pictures, we have two students learning on medicine balls, we have students learning at desks, and students learning by sitting on the ground because they have found that that's the most effective environment for them. All of these students happen to be learning on a laptop here, but often instruction would be combined with written instructions, or after they explored on their laptops, they may write notes to each other and present it on the board. So it's all about making that environment most effective for all learners. Lastly, expression. So we want students to be able to show us how they learned in a variety of ways. This goes hand in hand with representation because in these pictures we have information being not only presented through multiple means, but the students are showing us what they learned through multiple means. For instance, we have a student learning on the board, learning on a laptop, but also with physical manipulatives. We have a student counting on a screen and then showing us how she creates sentences on an iPad. For individualized intervention, let's say we have a 13-year-old in the middle school setting with the diagnosis of a learning disability, dyslexia specifically, and ADHD. His tasks are reading comprehension, writing, and math. So here are some ways that we would be able to incorporate UDL into this individual intervention plan. For engagement, we'll want to learn some things that the student is interested in and motivated to do. For instance, maybe this client is interested in sports. Maybe he feels most comfortable working alone. He wants to finish assignments on time, so he's motivated by finishing those assignments in a timely period, but he's easily distracted. For representation, we learn from this client that he prefers computers over worksheets and he prefers verbal instruction. For action and expression, we find that this client prefers to present typed work over written work and enjoys one-on-one feedback from the teacher rather than, for instance, presenting it to a group or presenting it to the class. For his UDL plan, we're going to want to make sure that we minimize distractions and encourage attention. We might be able to do this by, for instance, having the student choose seating that is most appropriate for him. So that could be a wobble stool, it could be sitting on a milk crate, sitting on a seat that is on the ground, and it might also be using headphones. This student should work alone on a laptop or in a computer lab, wherever he feels most comfortable and whatever allows him to have the most attention on the tasks. This client might benefit from utilizing assistive technology, for instance, in the form of computer programming. The teacher of the student or therapist might modify the length of the assignment so that the student is able to finish them on time. And it will be important to collaborate with the student at the end to assess his work and to help guide those goals that he has for learning. For reading, for instance, there is a reading program called RAS Kids. This is just one example of an assistive technology on the computer that can be used to help learners who may struggle with reading or understanding written work. In RAS Kids, you'll have a story and you can choose to read it on your own, or you can choose for the story to read it to you. So, for instance, this student might have the story be read to him, and that can help guide his understanding better. And in this case, we know the student is interested in sports, so perhaps we would have him read a story such as this about sports. Then for writing or comprehending a child's work and presenting that information, it could be done on a Google Doc using predictive text. In this case, the student might have trouble typing, spelling, and just creating work that is easy to understand by the teacher on his own. So he might use predictive text to help guide his writing. In this case, as you begin to write, it kind of predicts what you're going to say, so that instead of having to type the whole thing, you can press the tab button and it will make that sentence for you. Lastly, let's say the student is working on a math problem or program. He might use a Google Doc and use voice typing instead of typing on his own. As you can see here, he could read the problem, or again, Google Docs can read it to him. And then instead of him typing the answer, he can record his voice to find that answer. Then, as we mentioned, that student's work can be assessed by meeting with the teacher one-on-one and then seeing how he's doing, see what's going right, see what's going not so great, and then a new plan can be created for the student to keep encouraging that learning and that motivation. So that's the universal design for learning in just a few ways about how it can be used in the intervention process. If you want to learn more about the universal design for learning, you can go to www.cast.org.